What is up, everybody? Thank you for coming back. For those of you who saw my first video, kind of was like an ode to my 13-year-old self in those awkward teenage years. So, wanted to come back to something a little bit more familiar, and that is the one and only Michael from that chapter. And this is one hell of a story. You guys gotta definitely check it out. I think if I say too much, it might give it away. Other than the fact that what happens when the police have to arrest one of their own. And to think you're so close to retirement, and you know, like this old saying goes, a lie may get somebody in trouble, but the truth is always going to come back and haunt you. My ex-wife. Sorry, that's a little bit of a tick. So without further ado, everyone's favorite, Michael, and his wonderful chapter. I don't know why I said it like that, but his wonderful channel, That Chapter. Go show the content creator some love. I'll leave his info in the description below. For the haters, I could always say a moment of silence, this or that. But I'm going to let you know right now, I approve your messages to get seen by everybody. So, really, working in the music industry and in the entertainment industry as a whole, I don't really care if I get mocked like, oh, you know, you gotta brag that you're in a movie, this and that. Hell, I want to see you be in a feature-length movie and not brag about it. I mean, even Tom Holland, who was freaking Spider-Man, who was awesome. I mean, Tom Holland to me is the shit. He is living high right now. And that dude is so excited with everything he does. He has to usually have somebody like a babysitter because he gives so much away. And that's how excited you get. So, if you guys want to call me out on that, by all means, feel free to. Because you know what? It bothers me about as much as, well, shit. Yeah, your words don't really bother me any. So, go figure. But for those of you who have anything positive to say, thank you guys, because those are the words that really mean a lot to me. I wake up, first thing I do, I used to check like Facebook and all that. Now, honestly, the first thing I do is I wake up and I go straight to my YT studios and see where I'm at. And that is what matters to me most right there. It'll show me comments, it will show me, you know, subscribers, it'll show me, you know, data. I mean, it's awesome. Still looking to regain that one subscriber who unsubscribed, whoever the heck he or she is, I swear. No, I'm just joking. But anyways, hope you guys enjoy. And if you excuse me, I'm going to have to step away for just a quick moment, but I will be back.
Hey you and well, my name is Mike, and in this old video, like every video is old, we're going to take a look at the batshit insane case of Stephanie Lazarus. When Sherri Rasmussen was found murdered in her home in 1986, it seemed to have been a robbery gone wrong, and so the case went cold for nigh on 20 years, when, like the man himself, it came back from the dead. In this video, you got your crazy love triangle, your crazy interview with Crazy Lady, who was a cop by the way, and then your 20 years of people pointing the finger and nobody doing anything about it, until they did. So let's stop kicking the tires. Our story begins with a man by the name of John Ruetten, who was basically caught in the middle of this entire affair, and the affair he was having. John was born in 1959 and began attending UCLA in 1978. While attending university, studying mechanical engineering, he met a certain Stephanie Lazarus. Sound familiar? She's the title of the video. What are the odds? Stephanie was also a fellow UCLA student. She was studying political science. And, guess what? They started dating. They kind of had an on-again, off-again relationship. It was never official. They were more like friends with benefits. Now, while they were fooling around in university, Stephanie threw a couple of red flags. For example, she'd photograph him naked while he was asleep. Harmless stuff, not really. But this went on for a number of years until they both graduated. He would get a job with a hard drive manufacturer, and Stephanie, wouldn't you know it, would join the LAPD, getting her badge in 1983. In June 1984, John would later meet Sherri Rasmussen, a director of nursing at Glendale Activist Medical Center. As the year went on, things began getting pretty serious, with Sherri having diamonds in her eyes. But Stephanie, oh boy, she had not forgotten about old dear John. Even though they had stopped dating about 2 years previous, when they both graduated university. In 1984, Stephanie threw a surprise birthday party for John. It was his 25th birthday. She was totally out of the loop that he was in a pretty serious relationship with another woman, Sherri. And when she found out that John was seeing somebody else, oh boy. Stephanie would even write to John's mother, telling her of how heartbroken she was.
Wow.
The next year, Stephanie rocked up to John's condo to get closure. One final bang, they were good to go. John was engaged to Sherri at the time, and remember how I said one final bang and they were good to go? I lied. That just seemed to lead Stephanie on even more. She would pop by to John and Sherri's all the time, and this made Sherri feel very uncomfortable. No shit. She knew they had a thing in college. Sherri and John, they would get married in 1985. Stephanie didn't give a shit. One time, Stephanie even popped by Sherri's office to tell Sherri that things weren't over between her and John, and that if Stephanie couldn't have John, no one could. Which is a totally normal thing to say if you're a cartoon villain. Sherri would relate her fears to her parents, that she might be dealing with a nut job, that she thought Stephanie might be out to get her. At times, she would even come out of the condo she lived in with John in Van Nuys and see Stephanie standing outside in her LAPD uniform. And a few days before what happened, Sherri even told her parents she believed she was being followed. Early on the 24th of February 1986, John left the condo he lived in with his wife of 3 months for a lovely day of work ahead. 29-year-old Sherri Rasmussen was due to start her job later that day, though she was supposed to give a motivational speech at work, which in my experience I just usually crocks of shit, and she was not in the humor for it. She was actually, she was going to pull a sickie. So Sherri would stay home for the day, and this is when things get darker. So John had left for work, Sherri was at home, and at 9:45 a.m. a neighbour noticed their garage door was open. With Sherri's BMW, an engagement gift from John, 'twas gone. John and Sherri's sister would call her throughout the day. No answer. And at around midday, a maid working in a nearby apartment heard what she thought was two people fighting and then falling. She didn't hear any gunshots, and she didn't file a police report because she thought it might, just be a domestic dispute. John would eventually return home hours later and find his wife dead on the floor. She had been shot 3 times. The place, it was in bits, broken vases, toppled sideboards, bloody handprints. She had been shot through a quilt in order to muffle the sound. Sherri had put up quite a struggle. She had defensive wounds. Someone had attempted to bind her, and she had bruises on her face. She also had a bite mark on her arm, like someone had tried to take a chomp out of her. It seemed like she had been surprised while at home. She was wearing her nightgown and so forth. So, who could have done this to Sherri? Wink, wink. Well, obviously it was a burglar. Someone had broken in to steal electronic equipment. There was a shitload of it stacked beside Sherri's body. So they were in there. They got surprised by Sherri. Struggle ensued. They killed her. And then they made a ACL retreat in Sherri's car. Hence why not that much was missing. Her jewellery and all her stuff was still there. And why her car was gone.
That seems to be a common theme of killings that are premeditated, is that they'll make it look like a robbery, but yet there is nothing missing whatsoever. Especially you would think jewelry, but I don't know.
The silver BMW would be discovered 2 miles
Such a beautiful
from the
woman,
couple's
too.
house 10 days after the murder, but gave investigators jack shit. The only other thing missing was John and Sherri's marriage license. Maybe the burglar was the sentimental type. Well, they were half that word at least. The lead detective did look into John, but he was quickly ruled out and he moved away shortly after. There had been burglaries in the area. A few days after, 2 men had robbed a woman at gunpoint. A few months after the murder, the same 2 held another unsuspecting woman at gunpoint after she walked into a break-in. Her house was just a few blocks away. They were described as Latinos, between 5 feet 4 inches and 5 feet 6 inches tall.
I'm sorry, I hope I didn't pause it, guys. I don't see how.
They therefore emerged as, but he was quickly ruled out and had his license. Maybe the burglar was the sentimental type. Well, they were half that word at least. The lead detective did look into John, but he was quickly ruled out and he moved away shortly after. There had been burglaries in the area. A few days after, 2 men had robbed a woman at gunpoint. A few months after the murder, the same 2 held another unsuspecting woman at gunpoint after she walked into a break-in. Her house was just a few blocks away. They were described as Latinos, between 5 feet 4 inches and 5 feet 6 inches tall. They therefore emerged as the primary suspects in Sherri's death, but they were never found. One of the suspects was carrying a gun of the same caliber used to kill Sherri, so seemed to match up. But Sherri's parents, they were like, shortly before our daughter was brutally murdered, she had mentioned a woman by the name of Stephanie Lazarus who was stalking her and intimidating her. I don't know, might be worth a go. The detective made a note of it, but dismissed it pretty quickly. Even after another detective said, there's a bite mark on Sherri's body. That's like something, that's more of a female thing to do.
There's a good documentary, and I forgot the name of it. It's on Netflix, but every year they do a new, how can I say it? I don't want to say ligatures, because ligature, maybe I should. Yeah, I should have looked up the definition for ligatures, but they look for new forensic, evidence, and so many people, so many labs come up with different things, and this one gentleman in the South who was doing bite marks had falsely imprisoned, tons of African Americans. I mean, tons of them. And they had a real big specialist come in and say, it really isn't the most reliable of evidence. And so, when he did that, this guy caught a lot of shit for it. And a lot of people got let go. But he's right. He finds that more women do it than anything else. And that was one thing that guy in the South, who just happened to be a dentist, yes, that experience helped, but it didn't help when, the body goes into rigor mortis and how your body changes. And so, a really interesting documentary. I think it's called The Innocent Project. That's it.
Men don't usually bite, but women do. Maybe there's something. Don't worry about it. It's a burglary. We solved it. And so time passed with jack shit to show for it. The police kept their line of thinking, burglary gone wrong, and this is Los Angeles in the 1980s. They had bigger fish to fry. However, Sherri's parents were like, we disagree. The fact that someone was able to mask the gunshot with a blanket kind of proves more that this wasn't just a struggle, this was a deliberate murder. Sherri's parents kept it up as many years went by. Press conferences, rewards, offering to pay for DNA testing. The investigators told them they were watching too much TV. It's always funny when people say that, because covering these stories, on that chapter, the truth is always a lot more batshit than fiction is. At one point, Sherri's parents were told by a detective, you should do yourselves a favor and move on with your lives. Good idea! So, what was Stephanie Lazarus doing during this time, I wonder? Well, she was having a very successful career. Rising up the ranks of the LAPD, eventually becoming a detective, and marrying a fellow police officer, Scott Young, and they adopted an infant daughter. She became quite well respected, thought of highly by her fellow officers, having an unblemished record. For example, she helped fundraise to provide reliable, round-the-clock childcare for parents who worked on the force. At one point, she even started her own private investigation company, Unique Investigations.
God bless all the little children in the world.
And that was that. Until a couple more years. And by couple more, I mean about 18, when, in 2004, LAPD criminalist Jennifer Butterworth took a look into the case. She was examining the forensic evidence from the now cold case of Sherri Rasmussen using modern, investigative techniques, that kind of stuff. Using the forensic evidence from the crime scene, Jennifer found the suspect's saliva, which, dun, matched an unknown female. She continued digging and found the report that Sherri's parents made, that someone, a woman, had been after Sherri not long before the incident. She put two and two together pretty quickly and was like, hey, has anybody looked into who this woman was that Sherri, said was following her? Oh, she's a detective. You don't want me to look into it? You're still saying it's burglary? Okay, fine. I mean, we should look into it though. Maybe, okay, fine. Forget I said anything. It wouldn't be until 2009 that the Sherri Rasmussen case would be given a fresh pair of eyes. And by that I mean two pairs, Jim Nuttall and Pete Barba.
That has to be one of the most awkward positions in the force. In fact, I've mentioned this many times when I've talked about Columbine High School. My former best friend at the time, his father was a detective for like 39 years and worked the last maybe 10 years, 15 years or so as internal affairs. And those are the cops that are afraid. Cops are afraid of those cops, let's just say. And, definitely don't want to get on their bad side.
They started from scratch, with the burglary theory out the window from the get-go. Their first thought was that the attempted robbery was staged, and they knew their suspect was female. And on their list was old Stephanie, back from the list of dead leads. I only wish there was a name for someone who came back from the dead. Stephanie was now working on art theft cases, by the way. A very classy affair, which tracked stolen art and art forgeries. And so, all the other suspects, women who in one way or another may have had disputes with Sherri, they were all eliminated due to DNA testing. But Stephanie, she was a co-op. You don't go after your own. Which I think is the motto of corrupt police officers everywhere. Something like that. So, with Stephanie being the only remaining suspect, Jim and Pete, the two detectives, they had to look into her. Covert-like. She wasn't even listed as a suspect in their files, she was just listed as number 5. And it was especially awkward when Stephanie's husband, Scott Young, his office was literally across the hall from the cold case division. Kind of awkward when you're going to get a coffee. And so, digging into Stephanie, they discovered that she had reported her backup off-duty gun stolen 13 days before Sherri was murdered. Wow, I wonder if it was the same caliber. Of course it was. She likely fucked it in the ocean, specifically the Pacific. Interestingly, she didn't report her gun stolen in her own police department. She reported it in Santa Monica, as if she didn't want people maybe to know. So what else did they have? Well, Stephanie was off the day Sherri was killed, and would know enough about crime scenes to make it look like something it wasn't. And so, Stephanie was put under surveillance, and after nearly 2 weeks, she tossed a soda cup and straw into a trash can. The detectives would retrieve.
I got it.
Bingo. Due to her being an armed police officer, her arrest had to be carefully planned. They lured her to department headquarters, under the pretense that they had a suspect involved in an art theft they needed her to interrogate. To get there, she would have to surrender her gun. So she rocked up, and then quickly discovered that there was no one there she was supposed to talk to, and she had been hoodwinked. And so the investigators, they brought up Sherri Rasmussen, casual like. Prepare yourself for this one.
Stephanie, can my partner? Hey.
Hi.
Sure, nice to meet you. How's it going? Okay. I don't want to bring this up in your squadron. No, it's fine. I think we're good.
We're going to bring somebody in, right?
Yeah, I'll explain. I don't want to talk about this in the squadron because I don't know who people are listening. And if we go to my side, everybody's always wondering what everybody's saying. Okay. But we're talking about being busy and stuff. We've been assigned a case that we've been looking at. Okay. It's a new case, and reviewing the case, there's some notes to see as far as your name being mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Do you know John Ruetten?
John Ruetten?
Ruetten.
Oh, yeah, I went to school with him.
You did?
Yeah.
How long did you know him?
Gosh, I went to school in, let's see, went to UCLA in 1978 I started, and, met him at school at the dorms.
Were you guys friends, close friends?
Yeah, we're very close friends. Yeah. I don't know, what's this all about?
Well, it's a case we're working on. It involves John, and in there, some of the statements we reviewed, there's notes and stuff that he knew you and stuff.
Oh, yeah, good friends, lived at the dorms for, I lived there for 2 years.
You guys lived in the same dorm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, extra.
Okay. Were you guys just friends or anything else, or?
Yeah, we were good friends.
Yeah. Was there any relationship or anything that developed between you guys?
Oh, that's right there,
I mean, what's this all about?
Well, it's relating to his wife.
Okay.
Okay. Did you know her?
Not really. I knew that we got married years ago.
Did you ever meet her?
God, I don't know.
Do you know who she was or anything?
Well, I think it's been a long time ago.
Let me pretend to be your friend
I met.
while I extract as much information from you as I can.
I have met her. Geez.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. You said you dated John. How long did you guys date?
I mean, are you guys, is this something, I mean, you said I was going to introduce me about art. Can you
So here's the situation. It's basically, we knew that this, when we saw this in this condo, that maybe, there was some relationship there. That's what the condo seemed to indicate, and we didn't want to come up to you at your desk and ask those kinds of questions or do anything. You know how up there people can see what's going on if you go into an interview room, if people are in there doing some talking. So we wanted to afford you some privacy, some confidentiality to talk about this because we thought it might be, something, you're married to someone else, obviously, and so forth, and that you may not want to, talk about these things in that setting where someone, we don't want the rumor or gossip or any of that kind of stuff.
That's fine. I mean, God, that's been a million years ago. I mean, what year is it now? 2009. I mean, I graduated in 82. 82, yeah. We dated. I dated other guys. I'm sure he dated other girls.
Have you ever met his wife?
I may have.
Do you remember her name or anything, or? for what she did for a living, or where she worked, or anything about her?
Well, I think I think she was a nurse.
Gotcha.
I mean, I don't, again, I mean, what, I don't understand why you're talking about some guy I dated a million years ago.
Well, do you know what happened to his wife?
Yeah, I know she got killed.
Remember the first name?
Sherri, I don't know, something, like I said, it's been so many years, and,
From all the years, as far as you can remember, do you remember ever talking to her? Just
like I said earlier, I may have talked to her.
You mentioned the hospital, maybe. You may have talked to her at the hospital.
Yeah, I may have, why are you calling me if you're dating her, or living with her, or married to her? I honestly don't remember the time frame. I'm like, come on, knock it off. And now I'm thinking, I may have gone to him and say, hey, you know what? If he's dating you, he's bothering me, and so I'm thinking we had a conversation about that, one or two maybe. I don't even know where they live. That's what I'm saying. If I knew where they live and I'd been there, if it was for something social, and I can't see anything I saw her face. If you live in Moscow, did I ever see her there? I don't know. I mean, I may have seen her at his apartment in Moscow. I may have met her there.
But she didn't have any issues with her, right?
No, I mean, obviously, if he was dating me and dating her, I probably said, hey, pick her or something, back then. I can't say that we ever screamed or, I'm crazy.
I'm crazy. It's easy to sit on this side of an interrogation and pick apart, everything that they're saying. And even, I'm sure, for the detectives, I wish they would employ more of what SWAT teams do. You get too tunnel visioned when you have snipers. So what they do is they interchange them every 10 to 15 minutes because, almost the same thing is the same with, defendants, is that if you start getting too tunnel vision, you are going to lose a life that probably you can't afford to lose. In meaning that, let's just say if they're guilty beyond belief, switching out the detectives. And I know establishing a rapport and all that is very important. And they're two totally different things. I get that. But, with her and her training, she knows what's about to go on. And, the moment that all that started happening, she should have just, pled the fifth.
You're lovely.
Oh, people think I'm really hyper, but I can get upset, and I forget 5 seconds later, you could have guys rise you and you go, I don't know, it's like I said, this stuff's been so long ago, I'm sure as soon as I walk out here, I'll go, oh shoot, 25 things I'll remember,
But you'll call us, or you'll just come over our desk.
Yeah, I don't know what else you need to know, like I said.
Some of Sherri's friends said that you and her were having a problem because of the John situation.
Well, I don't know who her friends are, because again, I don't recall, if you did tell me where you met her, I don't know who these friends are. A problem.
Well, that's what I'm reading is that you guys have problems with each other on work are being exchanged, and it's all related to John.
You know what? I can't say.
Can't say.
No, that doesn't even ring a bell.
It seems like you would recall something that was going on with you, right?
I would think.
Well, on some of on this case, this is occurred in 86, right? detectives processed the scene, things of that nature.
She processed the
They
scene.
did fingerprints and all that stuff. This is occurred in '86, right? Detectives processed the scene,
Oh,
things of that
detectives
nature.
processed the scene.
They did fingerprints and all that stuff. You know the staff. You've been doing this longer than I have.
Well, not that. I get 26 years on, going on 26.
19, so. But, you know, as they processed everything, they did the best they could at that time, and they looked at a lot of people and different things in this case. And you're
I mean,
right.
if you guys are claiming I'm a suspect, then, you know, I got a problem with, you know, with that.
Okay.
Okay? So, you know, if you're doing this as an interrogation, you're saying, hey, I'm a suspect. Well, now I got a problem with, you know, now you're accusing me of this? Is that what you're saying?
We're trying to figure out what happened, Stephanie.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, do I need to get a lawyer for accusing me of this? You know,
You don't have to, I mean, you know,
I'm just-
you're not free will. And,
no, well, I know, but,
You're not under arrest. You can walk out.
you can do whatever you like.
well, you know, I'm trying to give you some background of, you know, how I knew him, and now you're telling me that somebody's saying that we had this big old fight, and I don't even know what you're talking about, you know, and I don't want to, you know, get in trouble for something that I didn't even do, or you're saying I did something.
Okay.
You understand.
You know, you guys like it if the tables were turned on you.
I understand. No,
No, that's what we're telling you. I mean, you're free to go whenever you want. If this makes you uncomfortable and you want to,
Well, I'm just starting to make me uncomfortable.
the thing is, I mean, detectives did what they could at that time on the crime scene. Okay? And the burglary thing you're talking about, that is an angle that they looked at. But now we're looking at everything else on the case. Nobody was ever arrested on the case.
I don't know that, or not.
Okay. Now, what we'd like to do is, obviously you know about all the DNA stuff and things of the nature that, you know, gets done on cases nowadays. You know, if we asked you for a DNA swab, would you be willing to give us one?
Maybe. Because now,
Just because
I'm thinking I probably need to talk to a lawyer.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
I don't know how this stuff works, okay? Don't get me wrong, you're right, I have been doing this a long time. And I wish I had been recording this because now it sounds like, you know, there's, you know, you're some of these people saying I'm fighting with her, and now it sounds like you're trying to, you know, I've been doing this a long time,
Yeah.
okay? And now it almost sounds like you're trying to pin something on me. Now I got that sense.
well, what it gets to on these cases, and you know it as well as I do, our job is to identify and eliminate
I can't
suspects.
believe this.
So if we ask you to point, give us a DNA sample, a buccal swab, so we can identify or eliminate you, would you be willing to do that?
Maybe. Because I know this,
That's what we're into. I mean, because right now, from looking at the evidence, it's, you know, it's possible we may have some DNA at the location.
that's right.
And we're going to do what we can to try to put this thing together. And your name's in the book. These people are pointing at you for whatever reason.
Oh, why? That's just crazy. I mean, that's absolutely crazy.
And it would be irresponsible on our part not to look at it.
I know, you guys have to do your job, and I guess I'm gonna have to contact somebody. So,
That's fair.
I mean, because I know how this stuff works. I mean, I just can't believe it.
That's all right. We understand that. I mean, if we were in your position, I mean, we would feel the same way.
I just can't even believe it. I mean, it's just, I mean, I'm shocked. I'm really shocked. Because somebody would be saying that I did this. I mean, we had a fight, so I went and killed her. I mean, come on.
Well,
That's,
okay.
After they requested a DNA sample, she noped right out and left the room. She was then arrested, like, right outside.
See, that's what I don't get, because they told her that she was free to leave at any time, and they did not specify that if she refused a DNA swab, that she would be arrested. And to my knowledge, they are supposed to do that, and they didn't.
this is absolutely crazy.
Let's see, Stephanie.
This is insane.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Stephanie, you know you have the right to remain silent, do you understand?
Yes.
Anything you say may be used against you in court. Do you understand?
Yes.
You have the right to the presence of an attorney before and during any questioning. Do you understand?
Yes.
If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you free of charge before any questioning if you want. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you want to talk to us right now?
No.
Okay.
This is crazy. I'm like in shock. I'm totally in shock.
A surprise twist to a decades-old murder mystery.
LAPD detectives have found a killer, and she is one of their own. The city's lab of the cold case that took 23 years to solve. Trisha.
Well, Christine and Carlos, this apartment building behind me here on Balboa Boulevard, that is where 23 years ago a woman was found murdered inside her apartment, and that case went unsolved for 23 years until this morning. That's when investigators arrested a veteran LAPD female detective for that woman's murder.
After her arrest, Stephanie was allowed to retire early from the LAPD. She was held in a Los Angeles County jail. Bail would be set at $10 million in cash. Reason being, the case was strong. She might flee the country or obtain weapons through her police officer husband. The trial began in 2012. Prosecutors argued Stephanie's motive for killing Sherri Rasmussen was pure jealousy. In his opening argument, the lead prosecutor summed up the case as a bite, a bullet, a gun barrel.
You know, I can't get over that. That is a high amount for... I mean, I've heard of a lot of crimes, and granted, she's a police officer, but she poses as much as a threat as anybody who doesn't want to go to prison in general. And yes, I get it that her husband's a police officer, but that is high.
And a broken heart. That's the evidence that will prove to you that defendant Stephanie Lazarus murdered Sherri Rasmussen. Several times throughout the trial, John Ruetten became quite emotional, and he said having sex with Stephanie while he was engaged to his future wife was a mistake. That's what tinkering with your dick will get you. He also had sex with Stephanie after his wife was murdered. Like, for fuck's sake, the defense just attacked the evidence, more or less saying that so much time had passed, the quality would have degraded, become tainted. Police never identified Stephanie as a suspect, even after Sherri's parents did, and so Stephanie's right to the due process had been adversely affected. The evidence, they said, was circumstantial. Prosecutors said in a statement of views filed in court that Lazarus misused her police training in the most profound way imaginable, by utilizing that training and experience to commit murder.
Okay, but one thing is that, does she have her names on the logbooks that are showing that she accessed the evidence? I mean, does she in any way tamper with the evidence? I mean, what is it that they're not... You know, I know Mike is only, able to get so much information, but I mean, everything so far is circumstantial. And if she doesn't have all of that, if she can't get her hands on all that, that's...
Murder and to cover up her crime. Lazarus betrayed the trust placed in her by the Los Angeles Police Department and by people of Los Angeles in order to pursue her own murderous ends. That she did.
People in the state of California versus Stephanie Eileen Lazarus. Case number BA 357423. We, the jury, in the above-entitled action, find the defendant, Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, guilty of the crime of murder of Sherri Rasmussen in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony
I only shake my head, not because I feel bad for her, but could you imagine hearing that?
as charged in count 1 of the information. We further find the murder was of the first degree.
52-year-old Stephanie Lazarus was eventually convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 27 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole in 2034. There were a couple of lawsuits after the trial, one by the Rasmussens, who, well, they had been pointing at Stephanie since Jump Street, and another by Jennifer Butterworth, who claimed that when she discovered the female DNA from the forensic evidence and started, asking about Stephanie, she faced harassment and was transferred. Neither lawsuit went anywhere. It's thought that at one point Stephanie may have even learned of the investigation into her, as some of the evidence the LAPD had but they couldn't find, they didn't find, was someone cooking the books, maybe misplacing a few things which, may have been used against Stephanie or were supposed to be used against Stephanie, but ultimately weren't because they couldn't find them. And sure, at one point Stephanie did actually work in the Van Nuys division, so she would have had unrestricted access to Sherri Rasmussen's case and all the files. She could, easily, hey, just gonna put that in my purse, pocket, whatever. But I think this case really comes back to the police, don't investigate your own mentality. Because if they did do that back in 1986, this case would have been a hell of a lot shorter. Though probably not as interesting, which is weird to say. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you'd like to watch some more of my videos, please work away. You can. And I will see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye out.
Another great video by Mike. This dude is a freaking... yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be aiming to put another one up here pretty soon. So, yeah. Again, that chapter. Go and check it out, man. Mike is... the dude is a hard-working fella. And I know, I think it would be hard for him to do tree videos a week. No, he is really one of the coolest and my favorite content creators. So yeah, go show him some love. Until then, peace.